Putting this presentation together, I got two kids. I got a year 9 who knows everything and a year 7. So my daughter Zoe is in year 7, year 9 Lachlan. Putting this presentation together, I look across the screen, I see this picture and I went, what is that, dude? What are they teaching you these days? He goes, Dad, did you know in November 2019, they took a photo of a black hole? I was like, oh, cool. And he goes, it's 55 million light years away and actually proves some of Einstein's theory of relativity. And I went, oh, that's amazing. How did they do it? He said they got 8 telescopes across the world and created what's called the Event Horizon Telescope. And these 8 telescopes were basically manned by 200 people, and they worked together and they set an atomic clock at each telescope that had an error rate of 1 in every 10 million years that it would lose time. And they collaboratively work together. And so I turn back to my presentation and I go, I'm going to a mining community and we are as cutthroat as it gets in terms of not sharing. And I was like, okay, that's cool. We can take a photo of a black hole 55 million years ago, but we can't share enough about safety in the mining environment. Okay, 1-0 Lachlan. Dad's go. Oh, well, did you know I was listening to a podcast and there are mining organisations that are using AI software to analyse their field leadership data to predict when incidents were happening. He goes, yeah, they couldn't do that with the black hole. I said, oh, why not? AI is pretty clever. He goes, yeah, when it comes to images, it can get confusing because it doesn't know, come on, it doesn't know if it's looking at a labradoodle or fried chicken or a chihuahua and a blueberry muffin. It sees what you wanted to see. So if you thought you wanted to see a black hole, that's what you're going to see. So they split these groups up and they basically analysed the images and came up with the image of the black hole. And I was like, oh, that's... Okay, 2-0 to Lachlan. So you see what you want to see. So I work for a drilling contractor. And sometimes this is how I feel you see us. That you come to our site and we're not wearing all the right PPE, we're lucky to be wearing a hard hat, and we got crap gear, and it's unguarded, and it's unsafe, and that's what you see. What I see is my dad in 1968, 3 months into his role as a driller, and this is the equipment that he worked with at the time. So you see what you want to see. So I had to shove this in because my boss loves this one. So we see, I've used this at another conference. So when we come to your sites, this is what we see. We're proud of our gear, we're proud of our people, and we are ready to go. And you see Fury Road. All right. So when I first joined Mitchell's as an organisation moving from BHP, one leadership team meeting we had a really strong discussion as a leadership team about safety. And one of the comments from an operational manager was, we're only as good as our clients. It's like, far out. That's a big statement. So we're relying on our clients to keep us safe. We're relying on their systems and the way they do things to keep our people safe. And for me, that's unacceptable. So I challenged it and the group had a firm discussion together. And so that's really what started our movement towards, well, hang on a minute, these people who are our employees and our workers choose to work for us. And we have a responsibility to look after them. So Ian Long, and I know Longy's done a lot of work with BHP, he put me onto the Field Guide to Understanding Human Error by Decker. I thought I'd need a PhD to read it. I thought I had a PhD when I'd finished it. But it led us down a path of learning about different ways of looking at safety, because if they are looking to the stars and taking photos of black holes and improving science that way, then there are organisations and people who are actually working on safety science as well and improving the way that safety is done. So Longy led us down a few rabbit holes and we stumbled across this thing called Safety Differently, and that's how it all started. So Safety Differently, 4 key concepts. It is a way from moving away from looking at your people as a problem to control and looking at them as problem solvers. They do the work, they know the constraints, they know what the conditions are every single day, and actually lean into that and learn from that. The second one was more around asking them what they need and feeling that you as a leader or the supervisor have to have all the answers. You're asking what they need. Was the presence of positives, such as capacities to be successful in varying conditions. So that's your controls, your ability to shift, your ability to move, rather than going, we didn't have any incidents, therefore we're safe. It's actually about the presence of positive things. And then a move away from bureaucracy, move away from paperwork as your only safeguard, and moving into more, hey, it's an ethical responsibility to look after these people. What's the worst thing that you can do to a client when you are implementing something like safety differently? Call it safety differently. So lots of people didn't like us using that term, and this is where we're moving. So the one lesson we learnt too is that don't name it anything. Don't call it a campaign, because it's not a campaign. This is a shift in philosophy on you as leaders and you as a business on how you see your people and how you see safety. So that was our first move into safety differently. Things we started to change were how we ran our pre-shift meetings, how we ran our safety meetings, how we communicated injuries, how we communicated events. We took away all the sort of negative side and really were attuned to the language that we were using with our communication. So a move from preventing things from going wrong all the time to a focus on making sure that things go right. You promised me this would work. So, all right, then we made a shift and we found about this thing called Safety 2. The biggest bugbear in this is this whole language of and. So people were calling it Safety 1 or Safety 2. It's actually Safety 1 and Safety 2. That's how Eric Holnagel always wrote it. And it's this shift away from putting all these constraints and controls in place isn't the only thing that's making things safe. It's actually learning about capacities and learning about things going well. Because most of the time, things go well. So 99.9% of the time, things go well. So do we just ignore that and we only focus on that 0.1% that goes wrong? No, we actually learn from what goes well. Trying to be proactive and anticipating things that can happen on your sites. Looking at human actions as a resource for flexibility. Your people are very smart, very clever on their sites. Like I said, they know the work. They know what's going to happen. And then with an incident investigation, and this was a big one for us, is that when an incident occurs, the same conditions were in place when things were going right, most of the time. So when you look at an incident, there's all these production pressure and lack of resources and the wrong tooling, etc. were there, and they were successful every day until they weren't. So that was a big one for us. So what did we do? This is probably the best thing that I can say from a career point of view that I've done is take away TRIF. We took away all communication of TRIF outside of our boardroom. You will not find it on a poster. You will not find it in a safety presentation. You will not find it anywhere. You will not find lost days. You will not find injury-free days. You will not find days since last injury on any Mitchell Services site, on any, we don't do posters. It's all about positive things we go well, what have we learnt? So it was huge. And the thing is, we talked about this morning. It's made this shift away from being fearful that when I'm 999 days injury-free, I don't want to be the one, and if I'm the one, I'm not going to tell you. Because we wanted to show them that what was more important to us is that we learn about what was going on in their sites and how we could improve it. And we're being very, very honest about that. Do we talk about TRIF in our boardroom? Yes. Why? Because we use it for tenders. Because we're asked to by clients what our TRIF is. Because it's usually compared to other businesses what their TRIF is. So we still have to do this work and we still communicate it to our board, but we don't make it our most important thing and we do not talk about it with our workforce. And that's a hand on heart. You can ask anyone in Mitchell Services. So the next one was a bit of a game changer, and this was a personal one as well, in that we sort of stumbled into this thing called human and organisational performance. So I'm like, Josh, you've thrown safety differently at me. You've thrown this thing called safety 1 and 2 at me. Now you're trying another thing on your organisation. 3 things? Like, really? Like, why don't you give one a go and then move on to the next thing? But this is just how they were coming. It was just like we were just learning so much as a safety and a leadership team. So I learned about this thing called HOP. And this is for leaders. This is not for your workers. And what HOP consists of is 5 key principles. And it's that error is normal. Even your best people make mistakes. And if you're relying on people to be right 100% of the time to have a safe operation, you will be disappointed. You'll be really disappointed. They'll let you down because even the best people make mistakes. Blame fixes nothing. It's actually one of our values within our business. It's never openly criticise. Blame is not productive. And blame actually shuts down learning. As soon as you blame, people will cower up and they'll just go nut. And blame actually causes a mistake to become a choice. So you've got to be careful there as well. So the next one out of the 5, systems and context drive behaviour. In that when something happens, and the question Andrew and I always ask, Andrew is my CEO, will go, if you and I were in the same place, in the same conditions, with the same tooling, etc., would we have done it that way? What drove them to that? And usually the answer is yes. So we need to ask, like, what was going on in that environment, leading into that environment, how was the supervisor talking to them, etc. And then learning is vital. Learning is absolutely vital. You can't just look for the simplest answer. Stay and play. Ask deeper questions. Ask better questions. Dig, 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 dig. Learning is absolutely vital in the organisation. And then the last one, and one of the most important I've found, is that response matters. And it's actually management's response matters because that's what's going to shut down a crew talking to you and being honest with you. So when I visit a rig and doing field leadership, how I respond to them giving me bad news will determine how much more bad news they're willing to tell me. So this human and organisational performance, there's lots of courses out there or whatever, my whole team's gone through it, but we've actually implemented this and safety differently and safety 2 into our leadership program, which is called Lead with Purpose. And we actually allow our supervisors to debate this. What do you see on the sites? How do you feel as a supervisor? How does HOP make you feel? What response do you get from your operational manager when things go wrong? So we ask these questions, we allow them to debate it. And the person you can see playing with the Lego on the, what's that, your left, that's Nathan Mitchell, he's the chairman. And he was coming in, he was showing interest and was like, oh, what's this? And this is activity about SWIs. And we talked about, you can't have all this information in the SWIs. And the SWIs will only show you, it's almost like perfect day, perfect conditions, perfect site, perfect everything. And that's what your SWI looks like. So we give them a bit of a vague SWI and a Lego set and go build this. And he was frustrated as he's like, there's no pictures and I don't even know what this part is. And I was like, imagine if you're a new starter and you don't know what a ROPS and FOPS is. You've never worked in mining. So it's a real eye-opener in our business as well. Now, there's a challenge in one of the Rethinking Safety podcasts where it says, go and have a look how many pages a new starter has to learn when they join your organisation. I think I stopped at 120 and went, yeah, point taken, Sean. Okay, no dramas. So we've done a lot of work around these principles. So where does HRO fit into it? Oh, another one. So luckily, Dr. David Proven recently, he basically put a table together and summarised all this new view thinking. It's called the new view. So he summarised HOP, he summarised resilience engineering, he put in safety 2, safety differently. I had to take out some of 2 other people's work because I couldn't fit the table in and I got told the font size could only be so big. But it also included Dave's guided adaptability, and I put HRO at the end, and he lined them all up. And he said, look, let's be realistic. All these companies saying, how do I get started? How do I get started in this process? So Dave just summarised it in 8 key points. And the reason I've put these all in the slide pack is that I know that Christian will distribute it after, and I know that you can look at these and you can discuss these slides with your teams and go, what do we think of this and could we do this? So for Dave's things, develop leaders with a safety mindset who display care for every team. And that's really important for our organisation. Understand your organisation's model of work and how it drives action. Go and have a look how much paperwork and how many signatures you need to get any work done, and have a look how many of those signatures were required during COVID. Suddenly the 7 people who needed to sign it who weren't on site because they were no longer determined as essential, their signature didn't matter. So have a look at how much roadblocks, and was it really important to have all those people's signatures? And I don't mean that to be rude. I'm actually challenging, because this is what this is about. It's about being open. Set your workers up for success. Understand their constraints. I was at a site and this person said, there's a freight company that comes here 5 days a week, and we use the one that comes 2 days a week. Why? So just understand what they're actually going through. Appreciate the variation in complexity and work performance. Appreciate the variability in your day. You don't just go, they're going to do this task and it's vanilla. They do the same thing every day. It changes. And I'll show you how. Closely monitor operations interactions and reflect deeply on what the insights mean. So that's really questioning about normal work. Being inquisitive, being really humble when you ask it too. That you actually are, I'm just asking, man, like, talk me through this. And then anticipate future operational scenarios, so that's thinking about the future. Establish a priority for learning. So have a look at your documentation, and do you really learn? Because someone who's not in your organisation, read that and take away a learning from your investigation, and then make adjustments to your business based on what you find. So one of the biggest things that we learnt, again, is this whole idea, and it's mentioned in the Rethinking Safety podcast as well. And Long introduced this to me, and I know we use it I know BHP uses it in your investigation as well, but this is the whole blue line, black line, workers done, workers intended. We've taken this to our workforce though, and we've said, look, we know that we ask you to do work, and we call this work as intended, work as imagined, work as written. That's how we think things happen. But we know you deal with variability every day, and that's what the blue line is, that's work. I might need you to click that, sorry. So we know people go to work every day and they make adjustments. And I'm going to give an example on our drill site. They make adjustments for how big the site is. They make adjustments for the angle of the hole. They make adjustments for how new the crew is. How experienced are they? Are they a new starter? Do I need to slow down? Am I in a really busy high traffic area? I need to be careful. Am I in a noisy area? They make all these adjustments every day. But there are occasions where they will interact with a hazard. And that's when we have an incident. They'll drift away from a safe environment. So we looked at this a little bit of a different way, because everyone just sees this black line as a black line and the blue line goes all squiggly. We broke it down a little bit differently. Come on. So learning from work. First thing, sorry, I'll go back. Can you just skip back for me, please? Thank you. So we look at our SWIs as more as this is a safe work area. There's enough information for you to make an assessment on how to do the work safely. And we've really beefed up our SWIs in terms of the number of pitches. We've identified things that are called critical steps. We really go, this needs to be done right. This is a critical step, or this has happened. And we also give them the why. This is why we do it the way we do. But there are hazards. There's hazards in everything that we do. And so this is that red line. And so I'm going to just step you through a task. And these are the pictures down the bottom. So the first picture is they're adding a drill rod to the drill string. And then they spin that thing up. They spin it really fast. Risk of entanglement. So what they normally do is they put a spin cage in place. They'll drill the hole. They'll then retrieve the core through the inner tube. And they'll put that into a tray, and then they'll clean that core. So it's a pretty simple task. Put the pipe on, drill it down, pull out the inner tube, put it on the rack, clean the core. The most hazardous part of this task is when they start spinning those rods. That's our critical risk. Now the thing is, we work at a number of mines that have golden rules, and if a golden rule says don't touch anything that's spinning really fast, is not going to do anything. You are relying on the human. And we just actually can't accept that. And that's where critical controls come in for us. And this is how we explain it to our people. That is too much to put on you to say, don't touch the spinny thing, be safe, care harder. That's what we want you to do. So that's where critical controls come in for us. That's how we explain it. And we can't put a critical control in for every single condition, but we'll try and put many controls and hard controls and barriers as we can to actually allow you to do work. So release the hounds. So release the workers and they work as safe as they can and they understand your SWI, but remember that they are adjusting to those conditions every single day. They're adjusting to that drill angle and the pad and the new guy and there's all this going on, and sometimes they'll drift. But sometimes they'll drift successfully and they'll get close to the hazard, so that might be a near miss. And then sometimes they'll drift away and that's actually better than how you planned it. So when they're doing this work and you're thinking, oh yeah, I've got all these SWIs and all these people are safe, what about days like this? So this is Sergey. Sergey's a trainee driller. He's probably been in the role with us 4 years and a trainee year probably just over 1. And this is Rebecca. She'd kill me if I called her that. So this is Beck. So they are on a rig in New South Wales. It's 11 degrees and for the last 24 hours they've had 135 mil of rain. And they don't really care at this stage about my SWI. They are adapting to the conditions. They know how to do it safely. Sergey knows where she's standing. Becca is very conscious of how wet everything and how slippery everything is because of grease. So they are adjusting to the conditions. They are making things safe. They are doing safety for me, not the SWI. So we'll go back to the squiggly line thing and I'll show you some of these failures. So we've actually had a near miss off a critical control because what we found is that with one of our spin cages, you can actually take a panel out. What? So we've actually got a critical control that you can adjust and you can make adjustments to. Lesson. That's a lesson for us. That's a near miss. That's a free kick. And then we have these other ones where they'll drift towards the hazard and nothing will happen. And then you've got this one up the top where they're that clever that the core is so thick and really heavy and they've hit this intersection that they need 2 of them to lift it. But my procedure didn't say that. So they've breached the procedure. Procedure doesn't say 2 people. So they've shown initiative and they've actually used 2 people to do a successful task. And then we've got this other one where they've actually had an injury. They've interacted with the hazard, they've turned a bit too sharply and they've sustained a back injury. And we asked them questions about that. Tell us about the conditions of work. Is there some human factors things we need to look at there in terms of weight? You know, how tight's the site? How often do you do it? How repetitive is it? And that's where we use tools like Perform to look at the ergonomics of the task. And then there'll be times where we'll go and do a planned task observation. The person won't be wearing gloves. You go, oh, you've got to wear gloves. Talk to them. How come you don't wear gloves? You know why? Because the client really wants me to wash this down and I've just taken them off because they get really wet and I was just about to put these ones on and you turned up. So it's asking lots of questions about that as well. And our workforce really appreciate this. It's like, oh yeah, we get that. We actually get that variation in our work. So we've changed our field leadership a little bit in that we'll go out and do critical control verifications and we'll go and do planned task observations. But the way we do planned task observations is to make sure that the procedure fits the person doing the role, not the person fitting the procedure. We make sure that it's capturing the best way to do a task. And then we've changed our safety interactions or whatever they were. And we call them workplace interactions because that's what it is. I want to understand about work. And then we've added another smaller one that just says learning from operations. Tell me how you do this task. Is there a better way? How come you do it this way? We just ask 3 things and we share those across the organisation and how we're learning. So it's all good that we're doing these verifications, etc. But what we found as a business is that we were relying on clients to do our critical control verification and we didn't get access to the data and we don't always work with a tier 1 client that's got a good critical control management system. So we had to work with our workforce on our own because really need to look at, and this is a great quote from Todd Conklin, that safety is not just about the absence of accidents, safety is the presence of capacity and controls. Capacity of your workforce to deal with variation, capacity of your workplace to deal with variation, and that you have controls in place for critical risks. So what we did with our workforce a number of years ago is we just said to them, when it comes to fatal risks, what are the things you think about when you go on a drill site? And they said, oh, we sort of like wrap the rig in a bubble. And we look at these 8 things. So we look at driving, we look at entanglement, we look at like stored energy sources, etc. And we basically were using that as a communication piece, but we had nothing to support in terms of a verification program of our critical controls and actually knowing what our critical controls were. And so we did it with our workforce. So we didn't bring in all the consultants and everything. We actually sat down with the workforce and said, on these drill sites, let's have a look at historical material unwanted events in the industry. And we've actually made this available online so anyone can learn of us as well, because that's what we're finding is that, Mitchell Services seem to put themselves out there. Jesus, it's not about, we're just trying to share. We're just trying to show that a very small company and a very small group of HSE professionals can work together with its workforce and form this information up. So we came up with 20 basically material risks with our workforce that apply only to our work sites. And the biggest thing they said to us is, please don't bring in more paperwork. Please don't bring in another thing for me to do. I'm a supervisor. You heard the podcast thing you went on about that I do 2 hours a day on paperwork. Don't bring anything else. So we focused on their current routines and we introduced it in their normal inspections that they do on a drill rig. And the other thing they asked us is, we don't want to just go to a rig and look at entanglement and answer 3 questions on entanglement and walk away and think everything's safe. We want to check everything while we're there. So working with our workforce and our supervisors, this is what we've come up with. So we have a system where we can go to any of our drill sites and verify all our critical controls for any critical risk that exists on that site. So we don't look at it as a risk, we look at it as work. And this actually gives us so much more information because they can actually do their normal checks while they're there. What's the housekeeping like? Do they have access to spare PPE? Are the isolation points easily identifiable and is the emergency stop working? So they can do a combination of a normal inspection and also critical control verification. And we can give this information to our clients. So we can operate using your systems, but we can also give you the confidence that we're going to be doing this as well for ourselves. And then we get this information. I'll go back really quick. Big thing with this is that, thank you. Big thing with this is that we didn't go and buy an off-the-shelf solution. We were just like, Andrew and I are very adamant that we do not want to just buy system after system after system after system, buy another one and, let's get this one and, this is shiny and let's buy that. Let's use what we've got. And we actually pushed our software provider to create a critical risk management system. And my intent always with that was selfish. I want it for my business, but also want it to be available for smaller businesses as well. It's a smaller software. Let's make it work for us. And what we get out of this is sometimes, as Bobby said, the watermelons, we don't think so. So we verify all our controls across all our sites. We have failures and we're proud of those failures. And the thing is, this slide is the first thing that our board sees as part of their board pack. And I've actually done this exact presentation with the board as well, talked them through work as normal, work as done. If you have nits, if I come to you and you read my report and someone's had a small hand injury, etc., they know, yeah, that's drift. Cool, it's got nothing to do with the critical control. Yeah, I understand that. That's probably normal work. What did you just learn from it? Awesome. So when we're looking at these, we ask 3 questions. What's our capacity to prevent an event? What's our capacity to control an event? And what's our capacity to recover from that? So this has been a bit of a game changer for us because what it showed is that you don't have to be a massive business to implement this and you don't need all the consultants, and they're going to hate me saying that. But we actually did this internally, and the way it worked and the reason we got so much uptake is because we did it with the workforce. So looking at the industry reviews, just supporting the Brady report, Sean highlighted in the industry review that we should focus on ensuring the effectiveness and enforcement of controls to manage hazards. What we were doing when we implemented Safety Differently and Safety 2 and HOP is that we were still working and learning, but we didn't have a system in place that really highlighted if our critical controls were working or not. And so we've done that as a follow-up to the Brady review. It was almost one of the first actions when Andrew and myself sat down and went through the Brady review. We were like, we need to get this working now. And also about this whole significant number of controls were administrative. Doing this task actually made us step back and go, how much admin crap are we asking our people to do? And wind that back. Do not add any more. And then with the Board of Inquiry, said ongoing monitoring and verification of critical controls are appropriate lead indicators. And that's how we see them. We see them as really good lead indicators. And if you don't do critical risk management properly, it can result in a lot of administrative burden. And we were very, very cautious of that when we implemented this program with our people. So, in closing, this is us. So, we are a leading drilling provider. And you've heard a little bit about our story. And I've got 650 people in my care. I'm nearly there. Mind putting me back up? Well, I can talk to this one. So, it's all right. Oh, okay, it's saying time, man, time. So we've got 650 people in my care, and we ask a lot of questions, and we learn about normal work. It's the biggest thing that we do. And we work in a lot of different environments. So we work a lot in remote environments, underground environments, surface coal, surface energy, surface minerals. So we know there's variable risks at all those things, but we have a critical risk program as a small drilling contractor to ensure that we can verify controls on those sites. And because of that philosophy, and we didn't even know we were trying to do anything to do with HRO, we were doing it for the right reasons. Basically, it's that whole ethical responsibility. We're doing it for the right reasons. And so we've been quite successful, and we've been recognised. You're killing me. We've been recognised by a number of industry bodies for the work that we've done, because we've always done it with the right intent. So I'll leave you with this, and it's a quote from Eric Holnagel, and it's always asking, what's happening when nothing bad is happening? So since the 1st of December 2020, I've had over 16,000 operational shifts and 1 recordable injury, and it was a small injury to the hand, and he got 2 stitches. And before you high-five me, I've had 88 critical control failures. I've had 2 rigs shut down by a supervisor because he wasn't happy with the way that the site was set up. I've had 2 people report some strains and sprains because they're not scared to. That's what's happening. A lot of people are working really hard to ensure that our controls are in place and that our people are right for work, and that's why we're safe. Cheers.